everybody. Thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. This is your host, Lauren, and I'm joined today by Suni Rao. 14 years ago, Suni retired from nearly a decade of playing tennis professionally and competing on the world's largest stages, including the 2008 Beijing Olympics, at the age of 23. Upon retiring, she was equipped with a sixth grade education, almost no money, and very little knowledge of how the world worked outside of her sport. Fast forward to the present, she's graduated with honors from Villanova University's MBA program and has built a thriving real estate business with 10 doors in her portfolio. Suni manages the behind the scenes efforts on the popular personal finance podcast Afford Anything, while co-hosting the Afford Anything Invest Anywhere podcast series along with Paula Pant. Suni has also been extensively featured on Bigger Pockets. Thanks for joining me, Suni.
Thanks for having me. And you read that so well. You read that better than I hear it in my head. So thank you.
I've done this a few times, so thank you. So are you guys looking for operational gains in brand build? Meet the easy to use platform that transforms your docs, PDFs, and emails into branded information that guests read and engage with time and again. TouchStay is in the business of helping hectic hosts and managers kill the time burn with simple technology, helping you to reinforce your brand through communication, skyrocket the guest experience, and create raving loyal fans. Their digital guest welcome books are rich with features including guest email collection and first impressions feedback capture, plus free email and SMS guest memos, in addition to providing a single place of information and inspiration to get your guests excited for their stay, appreciative of your offering, and happy as Larry, as they say in the UK, to tell everyone about it. Guests love TouchStay digital guidebooks as much as hosts, even mentioning them in their reviews. Want to look good every time someone has a question? Look up touchstay.com and start a 14-day free trial today. Our goal for today is to make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a big part of adulting. So today, Suni, we're going to talk about short-term rentals. But first, I got to ask you, what was it like to compete in the Olympics?
It was interesting. I feel like an imposter sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, because I was a tennis player, and to be totally frank, for tennis players, the Olympics is not like the pinnacle of our hopes, dreams, and goals. It was very cool. I had enough awareness at that age to appreciate it, but probably not enough awareness to appreciate it as much as I should have. But it's really, really cool to be a part of something that brings together so many people from so many cultures all over the world, and to see athletes who are in sports where the Olympics is the pinnacle of anything and everything they've dreamed for, and all of their training and competing comes down to a couple seconds. It was an incredible experience that I am so grateful to have had.
That's amazing. And I'm glad I've now met an Olympic athlete. So we heard in your bio, which is kind of mind boggling when you think about it, that you basically had a sixth grade education. I'm assuming because you were so focused on tennis. You had almost
Yes.
no money, very little knowledge of the real world. How did you start gathering those things? More education, more knowledge, and then finally money.
I joke a lot of times that it's brawn over brain. My time in sports has taught me to work very, very hard, and to be okay with delaying gratification for a very long time. So I couldn't really get into any kind of decent undergraduate program right off the bat. I did have a GED, which is an equivalency diploma, but I didn't really have to know much of anything to pass that.
Hmm.
I basically didn't study. So you kind of have to start where you are and do the best you can. And for me, that looked like going back home to Florida, where I grew up, and enrolling in a local community college and taking like remedial algebra classes and remedial calculus and remedial English, like grammar, all the stuff that I miss, and then starting from there. And I was lucky to have met some good people along the way, and people who opened up my eyes, because I didn't know what was possible outside of my sport at all. And I mean, honestly, I'm still learning. I think we are all learning as life goes on, right? What's possible for us and what isn't. But I just started working through my local community college, got caught up, and then started applying out of state to undergraduate programs that had large endowment programs, so that I could hopefully get academic scholarship or merit scholarship somewhere. And it actually ended up working out in my favor.
Wow, that's awesome. So as you're learning, how'd you come across real estate? Hey, local community college, right? That was one of the classes was real estate. How did that
Dude, I wish, because
right?
that was like what year was that? It's like 2009, 2010 in Florida. Like, we're going to go on a quick tangent here. I hope that's okay. So I was living in a condo at the time, renting this 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom condo for like $850 a month. They were selling at 120 before like the crash. And when I was living there, they were worth literally $40,000. $40,000, and they were nice. And so I tried to buy it at the time. So I was like, $40,000 seems really low, really having like no concept of business or money. But I tried, and the bank was like, we don't give out loans that low and you don't have money. And I'm like, I have like, at that point, it was like a little bit after my career, I had like 10,000 saved up. And I was like, I have 25% of the loan value. Like that should be enough. And they're like, no. And I was like, okay. And I just went home. Like that was it. I just went home. Like I wish I had some modicum of the real world and how things worked at that point, because a lot of the story would have been circumvented.
Well, I think that's really interesting though, that even then you must have had some proclivities towards real estate because you did that math and you kind of saw the intrinsic value. So I think even that says something.
I didn't actually get into real estate until quite a few years later, because throughout my tennis career, my income fluctuated significantly. Some days were great, some weeks were really bad, and then there would be months that were awesome and others that were just like really stressful. And I thought that success meant being financially successful, being financially stable, and being in a boardroom. So I chased
Sure.
that corporate career, right? So I went to undergrad, I finished undergrad, finished with honors, got into like a large multinational company, just worked and worked and worked and worked at everything I could, like all the prescriptive advice of like chase the grades, chase the extracurricular activities, all of that. I did all of it. And about 2 years into my program, I was meeting with my rotation manager, and I had done all these things that others in my cohort hadn't done. And I was talking to him, and at one point he looks over at me. He's like, yeah, we know you're good at things, but we don't know what they are. And I literally like won a chairman's award the year before for one of like my contributions. And I was like, you don't know what I'm good at. And then, so like that totally floored me. And then probably like a week or two later, in the role that I was in, there's certain roles within finance. I was in corporate finance where you do like corporate financial planning and budgeting. And part of that involves headcount. So you see people's salaries. So part of my role involved knowing what everyone was getting paid, including my cohort. And that's when I saw that I was the lowest paid of my entire bunch. And I had been doing all these things that nobody else had been doing. And I was just like, I was floored. And that was the moment that I realized like I could not count on my corporate career. And it was just like the ground kind of fell out from under me because I'd done all these things. And I was so sure this was it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So let's think about this. So many of your life decisions are based upon money. The people who are giving me my money don't think I'm good. That's not exactly what he said, but that was how I understood it. They just don't see my value. So basically, so many of the choices that I'm going to make are going to be based upon how these people feel. Like I was like, this is absolutely insane. This seems crazy. And so that's when I fell into kind of the personal finance wind tunnel. I started like listening to podcasts, reading things. I started to coupon. I started travel hack, and it was all great and cool. But I was like, okay, but right, I was living outside of Boston at the time. I was like, rent's still expensive. I still can't buy a house. Like, why am I saving 30 cents on this jar of spaghetti sauce? Like, this is doing nothing. And so I eventually found bigger pockets. Bigger pockets is what turned my world upside down and introduced me to real estate investing. And so that was probably 2016.
The
So
personal
2000,
finance wind tunnel.
yes.
I love it. That
I
is
mean,
kind of that is kind of how
isn't
it
that how
feels.
it feels when you first get into it? You're like, oh my God, all these things are hitting me in the face.
You know what I wish it felt like? One of those money booths, but it doesn't. You're right.
Right.
It's yeah. No, it's stuff that that visual just really stuck with me. And that's a similar path that I've heard multiple times on this podcast, and it's mine too. You go down the personal finance rabbit hole, and at some point you tend to end up at different ways to invest, and real estate investing pops up, and of course bigger
Yeah.
pockets and all of that. So you got into real estate investing. In your career, you were a really hard worker, probably some leftover nature from being
Trauma.
a it's in your nature to be very hardworking as an athlete. And that might have been where that was coming from. Trauma,
Yep.
quite possibly, having not gone through it and not being as a psychologist. I can't say it, but if you do, that's your word. Sure. So you're
I will
this
use it.
hard worker, you're applying it to your career. Did you then apply this work ethic, and maybe it was maybe it's like work ethic but like a little too extreme? Did you apply that to real estate investing too, or did that kind of allow you to get a little more balance back in your life?
Oh, we're still working on balance.
Aren't we all?
It's quite a few years later. She's just learning what this means a little bit. So yeah, no, I applied it to my real estate endeavors. I continued to work full time. At the time when I discovered real estate, I didn't have any money. Just finished undergrad. I just started grad school. But I was like, okay, so I don't have money, but that's a temporary situation. What is not temporary is how much I know about real estate investing. So I just like dove head first, commuting into work, stuck in that like really terrible Boston traffic every morning and every night, like gridlocked. I was like just intaking as many podcasts as I could, every book that I could, whatever I could consume, like I would take it in. I have a picture of like a vacation that I went on a cruise, a pina colada in one hand, and like Matt Faircloth's book on raising private capital in the other. Like it was my life for like 2 years. And then 2018 rolled around, and by then I'd saved up a little bit of money, and I purchased my first property, which was actually in Indiana, because there was no way in any time soon that I would be able to save up enough to buy anything in Boston. So that was the very beginning, the true beginning of my real estate investing journey.
And now you have 10 doors.
I
What's
do.
the makeup of that? You said you like homes. Are they single families? Are they condos like your first? What's the makeup of your portfolio?
They are a bunch of different things. So I will say first, one thing that I'm really proud of is that it's been 5 years. I've paid off three.
Wow.
And I really believe, like, I like to bring that up because a lot of people in real estate are about like leverage and return on equity, et cetera. And that is important, but it's also important to keep your goals in mind. So, like, my goal is cash flow and to become like what I like to call W2 agnostic. Like I could have a job, I could not have a job. Either way, it's cool. I'm happy. You know what
Yep.
I mean? Like I
Yep.
have enough to support me no matter what happens. And so that was what led me to like, I sold a property or two when I needed to. And then I just used that to pay off loans instead, like 1031ing into something bigger, like so many do. And so those 10 doors, I live in one, I house hack. Of the other 9 doors, 3 are short-term rentals. That means we're at 4. The other 5 are single families. No, other 5 are long-term rentals. And then of those, there's a triplex, a duplex. I usually have this like off the top of my head. I blame the brain fog from being sick last week. A triplex, a duplex, and then the others are single families. Yes.
Can you just tell listeners what house hacking is in case they don't know?
Right. So house hacking is using your living situation to earn you a little bit of money, and not just 100% like be a cash outlay. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, housing is our largest income or our largest expense, regardless of how much income we make. And it used to be between 20 to 30% of our income gross. And now that was like 3 or 4 years ago. Now that's shifted to 33.1%, which makes sense as the cost of living increases. So if there's anything that we can do to offset that, it can be really powerful in inching forward towards our financial goals. And whatever you want that to look like is fine. It can be a couple $100 a month, or you can have it offset your housing expenses completely, or you can make a profit. It's totally dependent on what you would like to do and what you're comfortable with, which is really cool.
I'm a huge proponent of house hacking. I've done it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So
That is awesome.
I totally recommend it to everybody. Buy a place, rent part of it out, make some money, get rid of that. Exactly like you said, Sunny, that number one expenditure on your budget, get rid of it, wipe it off the map. And then you have more money for investing. You can stop there, by the way, guys. So this is something that Sunny said that was really important. You can literally stop there. Just never, you never need to do it ever again. Just kill that one bill and then move on with your life. Invest in index funds, never deal with a toilet, never deal with a short-term rental guest, anything like that. You can stop there. Or you can go on like she has, and you can get this portfolio of 10 doors. And instead of growing and growing and growing for the sake of growing, really, you can start selling, paying some off, and doing some things based on your personal goals. Or if you want to sell those 1031 exchange, go get into some general partnerships, get some limited partners, and go hard with some 100-unit apartment buildings. You can do that too. And that's the point of real estate and financial independence. And everybody's story is their own. And I am sorry, Sunny, I just went off the rails with that one.
When you want a house hack, there's more than one way to do it. You don't necessarily even need to rent out like a residential space, right? So like if you live in a space where like you have a garage, like a lot of people rent out garage space. If you live in Florida where a lot of people have pools, or maybe people in an apartment complex don't want to share a pool, whatever. Like there's websites where you can rent out your pool, you can rent out parking spaces, you can rent out with the gig economy and like the sharing economy and all these things coming up. There are ways to monetize just about any asset. So if you're looking around, you're like, in my space, this, that, and the other, like there's other ways to do it. So
yes, great ad. Definitely. That is so true. I think I saw one where you can like rent a yard to like dogs too. Like,
really,
yeah, like a
that
whole other,
sounds so cool.
like a whole other level. So talk to us a little bit. I have mostly short-term rentals of our 14 doors, 10, 11, no, soon to be 11 are short-term rentals. So we've kind
Good
of
for
gone
you.
pretty hard on that side of it. What made you get into having short-term rentals?
I got into short-term rentals because the very first one, I had a unique space that honestly wasn't great as a long-term rental. It was my first purchase. There was a main house and a detached carriage house, and it was a stunner of a deal. So I had to take it. I was basically like, okay, two living spaces for the price of one in this amazing area. Why wouldn't I buy it? And then I rented out to a long-term tenant. And because it's like a 400 square foot carriage house spread out over two spaces, it's not really the most comfortable for long-term living. I mean, now maybe that's changed because there's more of a need for affordable housing, but I was just that person left after a year. She was great, but I was like, am I gonna have to go through this every year? And I'm only making $500 a month. Like,
Yeah.
what am I doing? And so that's when I was like, maybe if I turn this into a short-term rental, it'll be great, or at least better. And it was. It was after a while, it was pulling in probably like 1,200 post OPEX, like after all the operating expenses and stuff. So it was like doubling my revenue. And it was really funny because that was, when did I turn into short-term rental? I turned in 2019. It was a very different, like, it was a very different game then, you know. I probably spent like $600 on furnishings because I also didn't have money then. There's this like a recurring theme before investing and now during investing, because every time I have money, I put it in a property.
Yep.
But like I bought like a $25 coffee table off my neighbor's garage sale, and like this $100 pull-out couch from like this like affluent neighborhood where the people just didn't want it anymore, you know. And I was like
Yep.
cobbling it all together, and it looked fine. Emphasis on fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but in that environment, it was gangbusters. Through COVID, I still did well because people wanted a place to stay and to quarantine, and it was just it was great. So I did that, and then I really liked with it being a small unit, I really liked the business of owning a small unit as an Airbnb because there were less parties, there were smaller traveler like groups coming through. They book last minute and that will be fine. Like it was just so easy to stay full. And for someone who was always kind of like churning through her funds, trying to grow, my overhead expenses weren't high, which made it very easy and not stressful at all to upkeep if like I hit some kind of slow period or I had a cancellation or whatever.
Our first short-term rentals, we bought a bed and breakfast, and there were two ADUs in the back. One is a 500 square foot studio, and one's like a 200 square foot, like maybe it's a little bigger than that, but like a she shed. And so one has a kitchen, but like no closet, no washer dryer, like no storage. And the other one like doesn't even have a kitchen. It's just got this like kitchenette area. And that's basically it's kind of like a self-standing hotel room, sort of. And I had the same thought. We were looking to house hack and have a long-term rental. And I'm looking at these and I'm like, God, no washer dryer, really
Yeah.
small, no
Yeah.
storage. I'm like, I don't know how people are gonna live here. And then I did the same calculus that you did. I was like, but this is pretty cool for like a few days at a time. And so I started renting those out that way. We always said we are going to go back and put a washer and dryer in one of them, but we haven't done it because they do so
You haven't
well
had to.
without it. Yeah. And then so like same kind of thing. And then you're like, wow, it wasn't that hard to furnish. It's not that hard to keep up. And I've said this many times and I'll say it again. Having the smaller units, ours are all studio ones or two bedrooms. And we've had one party and it was in our biggest two bedroom. And in that one, like I don't even have a pull out sofa there because I don't want to encourage more people than can come
Yeah,
stay. And that's the one we've had a party in. So I think that's a really good point. And I just wanted to highlight it that those small units can be good to balance those things out.
for sure. Yeah, I 100% agree, obviously. After that, I didn't do another for a long time because I really like long-term rentals because it's almost like a commodity. People need it. You don't have to engage in consumer behavior. You don't have to engage in these different systems and stuff. And I have a full-time job, and so I wasn't eager to add to my plate. And what I like in long-term rentals in the areas that I like don't necessarily lend to good short-term rentals. And I wasn't ready to buy because it was a good short-term rental, because anything can happen at any time of day. Like regulations can change, wants and needs can change from the consumers. So I really didn't foray back into it until early this year because I was in a house hack, a duplex, and it was in a great area. And there's an area where it actually could do well as a short-term rental. And the thing was, I had two massive basements underneath both units. And the side of the basement that I was like living over was the side that actually could be turned into a rental unit. So I spent 8 months of my life and like, how in video games when you lose a little bit of life, a little bit of your like battery. Building that basement would cost a little bit of my battery life in the grand scheme of things, but it was so worth it. So it was like $65,000 project. I'd only done mostly like cosmetic rehabs, but that was like a gut to the studs without some of the studs. I had to break concrete to run plumbing, run electrical, run gas, like put up framing, the whole thing. And that was off like pretty much like gangbusters after I put it up. I just made sure like now I knew it was getting more and more competitive. So I made sure to hire an interior designer to make sure it really popped in the pictures and was like really aesthetically pleasing. And that was like my big thing. And I didn't do anything else different with that. And that's a 65K spend. I probably got most of that back through increased equity already, like
Definitely.
increasing the
Yep.
value of the property. But now it's also like last month was a little bit higher in terms of revenue because or this month because we just had the Indy 500, but I cleared 1,800 in May after operating expenses off of a 700 square foot basement unit.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, I really
So
like
you've hit
those.
on some of the main pros of short-term rentals. Obviously, the top line is more, but the bottom line is also more than you would get from a long-term rental. It's nice.
More than you can get. Not that
Yes,
doesn't apply to everyone,
sure.
especially not now, which is something I think we'll cover later, but
Yeah.
it can be more.
Yes. Usually it would be more in most circumstances, but yeah, definitely not all the time. I think your point about okay, I put the $65,000 into it, that went into the equity. That's something that short-term rentals I think incentivize owners slash hosts to do more of is a lot of upkeep on the property and make the property
Mm,
beautiful and make it a little over the top, which is something that I like about it. But there's some downsides that you mentioned too as well. Like it's a lot more work. I mean, it definitely is a lot. I mean, my long-term I talk to them not even once a month. There a
yeah.
day doesn't go by that I'm not talking to some of my short-term rental guests, right? Especially
Yes.
now when there's 11 of them. So, there's some positives and negatives, but what do you think your favorite things are about short-term rentals?
Helping people have a good time.
Yeah.
knowing that they're coming for like a vacation or what have you, and helping them have a good time. I actually also just launched a third Airbnb 2 months ago. And this is a big one. So this has been an interesting case study where I learned a lot about the Airbnb market and what happens in saturated markets. And that's something that we can talk about later on. But this one is very over the top. It's a Nightmare Before Christmas themed
Wow.
Airbnb
Wow.
with like a 6.5 foot tall Jack Skellington in one corner. Like it's pretty crazy. It's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, and so like having it's still slow, but like having people come in and be like just blown away, like taking it back to their childhood, or seeing like the scene where you have the big moon in the background and Jack on the top of like that little
Mm-hmm.
mountain curl thing, and seeing that like on their spoons or on their K cups, like, and just finding little bits of that everywhere. Like um it's so cool to hear their excitement. Like that is super duper fun. That's probably what I like most about it. And then obviously, like, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't bringing in more money, because it is a lot more work. I talk to them every day, just like you said, So I think it's probably both of those two things.
What about any negatives? What are some cons of short-term rentals?
So I think this is probably very market specific, but there are broad themes that I think apply to a lot of markets. So there is there is a saturation, a lot of people, there are a lot of owners now and hosts doing Airbnb now, where because before it was kind of like falling out of a boat, you'd hit water and you'd like make money, right? And now and you could be like a copycat. I was a copycat, like, just like looking for fast money, throw something in, call it a day. But you can't do that anymore, because there's so many people offering good things. And also because we've had a lot of bad hosts. People like,
Yeah.
well, may I ask why the hell we have tours? I have two small ones, but I do have a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom like a house. And like, I would not dream of asking them to like run the dishes, take out the garbage, strip the beds, do the laundry. Like, what? Literally, what are the cleaners there for? Like, that is what they're there for. Like, you don't, and that's chased so many people out of the game or out of like renting, because they can go to a hotel and they can just leave. They're there for vacation,
Yeah.
not to do housekeeping. So I'm seeing a lot of guests now who have 5-star ratings. I am not seeing a lot of guests who are new to the platform
It's a good point.
check into any of my places.
Yeah.
And so that could just be a local thing, or it could be more of a broader sentiment. So that means that between the two, between like the way Airbnb algorithms work, like having a short-term rental has turned into more of like a red-blooded entrepreneurial endeavor if you're going to launch a new one now.
Yeah.
You have to look at SEO optimization. You have to look at consumer behavior. You have to have your consumer avatar, who's
Yeah.
coming and why.
Yeah.
You have to have good copy. You have to have professional pictures. You can't just do it on an iPhone and throw it up, even with like 200 reviews and I have like a 4.78 like overall rating. Like, it's been a little bit more difficult. Like, I have to look at Facebook ads. I have to look at proper marketing. And so that's been tough, but it's also like when it's all said and done, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very fulfilling, because there's no doubt that this will be like Burton's Bungalow is what I call it. There's no doubt that I will end up being able to make Burton Bungalow like the epic spectacle that it is, that people see when they come in, but it's not guaranteed anymore. Like, um, occupancy in my area is around 30% for like monthly stays. And so that is going to be chasing out a lot of people who thought it would be easy money, et cetera. And so that's, I think, in time going to bring some guests back. It's just like,
I hope at least that we've peaked or gotten pretty close speaking in terms of number of listings. What I'm
yeah,
seeing here in the Tampa Bay area is, people selling for being like, I'm selling my Airbnb, I'm selling my short-term rental all the furniture is available, everything
Take it.
for
I'm done.
$3,000. Yep. And I see those posts a few times a week, and you were never seeing that in 2020, 2021. So I'm
No.
seeing that almost daily in 2023. So I think we're going to see short-term rental hosts exit. And I think Airbnb, VRBO, I think they're going to do a good job of bringing guests back to the platform. And it'll be interesting to see the direction that hosts go. Basically it's your property. Airbnb sort of lets you have whatever rules you want. I sort of wonder if they're going to get a little more micromanagey about what, you can even have guests do. So we'll see. But it's a really good point that the short-term rental market is changing. It's not as easy as it once was. And I think in some ways that's an opportunity for people that are business and entrepreneurial minded, like you said. So where are you going from here in terms of your portfolio? I know you mentioned you have a few paid off. Are you going to pay more of them off? Or are you going to do more short-term rentals? What does that look like for you?
I think I do. I would like to do one more short-term rental. And then we'll see. I'm not sure how many more I want to do. I like to have the ability to scale and like the commoditization kind of like business. Um, but I would like to, one of my goals is to get into small, very small commercial by the end of this year. So maybe like a 5 unit, a 6 unit, and try that on, get back to like my long-term residential investing, which I like. And yeah, I like to have like 25% of my portfolio paid off. It really helps with the financial burden, and I'm very financially conservative. So my plan is to hopefully get into a commercial and then maybe pay off another door or two and just sit tight and delever for a little bit and then see what happens. Life changes, like the markets change, environments change. So much has changed in the 5 years that I've been in it. I don't feel like I feel like we can make plans that will overall help us move the chess pieces for like the end win. But more than a few chess pieces in, it is so hard to know what you can do.
I can't say that any better than you just said it. So I'm just going to leave that. Is there anything else you want to add, Sunny, before we wrap up?
Well, I don't think I want to open my mouth again if I ended on such a high note.
Hey, you don't have to. You can just skip right to telling people how to get in touch with you.
Cool. So I'm on Instagram. My handle is Sunny Rao, SUNI_Rao_, and my website is griffixpropertygroup.com.
Awesome. I will put those in the show notes as well. Everybody follow me on Twitter at Adulting is Easy, on YouTube at Adulting is Easy, Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real. If you like this episode, you'll also like episode 128, Managing Short-Term Rentals from Abroad, and episode 117, Real Estate as a Side Hustle and Finding Your Tribe Online. That's actually our #1 episode right now. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Sunny and I have made adulting a little easier for you.